Thursday edition of the Bold Republic Radio Show. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. Okay, class, get your pencils and pieces of paper out there. I don't know if I can do that. Well, hang on just a second here. Hey, Amy.
Yeah?
I was going to have them get their pencils and papers out, but does anybody do that anymore?
I don't think so.
No, get your calculators out and your iPads.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Because what Amy Edmonds from Wyoming Liberty Group is going to do is she's going to take us through some annoying things like Common Core math and stuff like that. I need you to have on your desk, along with your iPads, tablets, whatever you're using, if you please have a glass of water, aspirin, and some Pepto-Bismol. Okay. So we ready to go here?
We're ready.
All right. What's going on, Amy?
Well, just wanted to recap, come back around and talk a little bit about where we're at with the Common Core. It's probably one of the most, hated education reforms we've seen in a very long time. It's been one of the most polarizing, certainly. I think anybody who hears the word Common Core doesn't have a positive thought. That's just the reality. But beyond all that, where are we at? So I wrote a little blog just giving some information about what's going on in Wyoming, and then also what's happening nationally. I mean, is everybody embraced the Common Core? What's happened?
Oh, well, now that's the big question for me. I mean, are we winning the fight, losing the fight? Is it a stalemate? How are we doing here?
In a sense, Glenn, it's a stalemate in that in Wyoming, we have not removed the Common Core. It's being taught in the classrooms. It's out there. Right. But the Common Core, as it is attached to all of the testing, as this huge national push towards, everybody having the same set of standards, is really dying, and it's dying a slow and very painful death. I mean, one great example is just in March, we had 100 education researchers in California, of all places, California, who came out jointly with this huge call to remove the Common Core. And what they said was, listen, you all have said that the Common Core is going to promote critical thinking skills and student-centered learning and all this other stuff. But really what we know is that this deprofessionalizes teaching. It narrows curriculum. It reduces the quality of education and student learning, and it needs to go away. And they basically called for a moratorium on Common Core.
Well, am I wrong to say that a big part of that is it was promised that this was going to be something that was handled on the local level, but the federal government has taken over, and so locally people are not happy?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, anybody who continues the fallacy that this was, locally decided and locally chosen is completely, bereft of any understanding of reality, because it's not. This has always been about, national organizations and this national idea of having one set of standards for everybody. But once they try to bring it down on all the states, and the feds offer the carrot and the stick approach, the big fat expensive carrot, lots of money, and the stick, if you don't do these things, we're going to whack you over the head and you're not going to get the carrot. That has proved to be a colossal failure, not unlike No Child Left Behind. I mean, Common Core is just one of a long string of ridiculous federal ideas that has failed, and this will be a failure. I mean, if you take a look at what's happened as far as student outcomes, so we've got states that have been teaching under the Common Core for almost a decade. I mean, it's been a long time. And no one scores. It's not as though national scores are on the rise, and all the promises that this was going to teach students better critical thinking skills and blah blah blah. That simply hasn't happened in Wyoming. We've had it since 2010. So this spring, the kids will take another round of tests. We're always testing. We'll have 6 years of testing data. We have 5 right now. Our scores are about. It's not like we've seen a steady, big improvement in rise. It hasn't happened.
Well, in the fight, I've seen plenty of people in Wyoming come out in the fight, and you and I have spoken at some of the same events, but I see the fight going on. So why is Wyoming still hanging on to it? Why isn't a state like ours having to let go a long time ago?
I think because, first of all, we didn't have enough lawmakers willing to do it. I mean, there simply weren't the votes. Too many of them were convinced by education bureaucrats and others that this was the way to go. I mean, this was the thing to do. We had to get in. Wyoming loves nothing more than to think that it's going to make itself, somehow acceptable and sophisticated with all of its neighbors, and by adopting these ridiculous proposals. There's just this huge, for as independent as we are, we're followers, we're not leaders. And we've been following federal dictates in education for a long time, and we continue to do so. So the fight has been very, very difficult. And then you throw in the political mix of folks who say, we really believe that this is the future for education. We've got all this new learning, because the Common Core, unlike No Child Left Behind, really is much more prescriptive, and just it changed a lot of things about, instead of root learning, instead of memorization, they're doing all these other things. You gave the example of math. Suddenly we have new math, which is literally causing parents to rip their hair out on a nightly basis. It's just the most ridiculous thing. So that huge shift, really, when you take that leap politically and say, I'm going to do that, you kind of have to hold the course. And I think many policymakers feel like, well, I wanted to be with the cool kids and say that I had to stick with Common Core, so I'm sticking with Common Core, and so I got to stick with it for at least a decade. It's like when they took phonics out of the classroom. And we've got a group of folks who can't spell because public education decided it was going to do something different, and it did. We're going to have a generation of kids that struggle with math and other things, and probably really become math haters. And certainly we know that the Common Core is inappropriate for first through third graders. There's going to be a lot more anxiety for those kids growing up in learning.
I also worry about, every so often a study comes out, and I'm as cynical as you can possibly get about polls during election year, polls in general, and studies, because, there's a study out there that shows that 98% of all studies are garbage. So when I look at the studies that say, well, let's say Wyoming is, let's say a study said Wyoming is rated as one of the worst states for education. Well, who did that study based on what? And so I don't know that we should necessarily look at those studies. Why can't why can't we have our own standards here?
Well, we can. No, absolutely. And we should. Yeah. And, we don't want to, and I'm always cautious, because I talk about student outcomes, and in the blog that I just wrote, I referenced back to a piece I just did a while back where I took a look at student test scores, and I took a look at a variety of different things. I looked at fourth grade scores, I looked at 11th grade ACT, I looked at college remediation levels, because, if you really want to get a sense of how we're doing across the board, you kind of have to look at all those different areas and say, okay, are we doing well or not? But I'm hesitant about that, because testing has become such a, this ridiculous passion, and we've got to do it. But testing does not really tell us everything we need to know about every individual child. Children are so unique in how they learn, and testing is not the end all and be all. So I'm very careful. So yes, we should be careful about studies. We should be careful about people telling us how we are. We shouldn't do that. We should develop our own internal set of standards. We should determine the level of testing we want to do, instead of, there's just far too much testing going on in classes, far too much. And that's the point that these researchers in California were making, which I completely agree with them, that the impact to students psychologically when all you're doing is testing, and when your curriculum is linked to testing, it does deprofessionalize teaching. Teachers are teaching to the test. Their jobs depend on teaching to the test. They can't be creative. They can't, go outside their lesson plans. They can't do all the things that teachers have done for a very long time. All these things are very, very bad for education.
When a state like California actually dumps out on Common Core, that ought to send shock waves through the Common Core system.
No, it should. I mean, that's why I bring it up, because it did. I mean, it made national headlines. People were talking about it. It really is a big deal when a state is left, politically left, as California says, listen, this is bad. We've got to get rid of this.
Okay. Now we're in an election year. So let's talk national candidates for just a moment. Do any of the candidates out there give you hope, if they were actually elected, that we might actually get rid of Common Core?
I don't. This is one of those issues where the feds dangle the carrot and the stick. The states fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. Wyoming being one of them. There's really no national candidate that's going to get Wyoming out of the Common Core. Wyoming has to get Wyoming out of the Common Core.
I know someone like Ted Cruz has said he'll end it.
Yeah, I mean, they all say that they're going. From what I know, I think almost all of them have said they don't like him. Maybe perhaps not the governor from Ohio, but
well, it has to be okay. Let's wrap it up this way. Then actually, the clock is ticking, so I got to let you go. But so, in other words, this has to be handled on the local level.
It does. There's no way. I mean, a president, unless he wants to do what we've seen our current president do for 8 years to executive action, which I wouldn't recommend, there's really no way. The states have to do this themselves. Wyoming has to have the courage to say, we can do this ourselves. We don't need to go this way.
All right. Amy, as always, thanks for coming on the program. Where can people find your work? Because you've written extensively about this.
wyliberty.org.